Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome back to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us again today. We're going to be speaking today about how to have a safer world and how to prevent our fellow human beings from ending up in prison, criminality, and losing really their futures. It's estimated that there's about 10 million in our prisons worldwide, and that really once they commit crime, they go to prison, they come out, but unfortunately go back again with recidivism. So today we have a very important show and a great guest and engineer. If you can put the pictures up on the screen of Mr. Capazorio, who was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, to Portuguese immigrant parents, and presently resides in Florida in the United States of America. Mr. Capazorio initiated his career in criminal reform and rehabilitation with Gauteng Department of Probation back in 1995. And there you see Greg in the blue shirts. Good-looking man. In 1999, he increased his criminal reform work into South African prisons, implementing an education-based criminal rehab program called Criminon in 26 South African prisons. Mr. Capazorio was the former president of Criminon International from 2013 for a duration of 13 years. The Criminon International Group is a non-profit public benefit organization that has the mission and purpose of restoring criminals to society and restoring them as contributing citizens and assisting the former criminal with justice system and reforms aimed at eradicating criminality around the world. As president of Criminon International, Mr. Capazorio addressed governmental leaders from South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Nicaragua, Jordan, Honduras, Colombia, Indonesia, Canada, Israel, United Kingdom, Ecuador, and obviously United States of America. And he met with more than 40 congressmen and senators in the United States Congress, working with the directors of the Department of Corrections in California, Florida, Illinois, and Oklahoma, amongst others. Greg has addressed various organizations on the re-entry of prisoners back into society. And as a lifelong ambassador for Criminon, Mr. Capazorio continues to help guide and promote Criminon groups worldwide to bring our penal systems up to a level never before realized. And engineer, if you can please put him up on the screen, I want to welcome Mr. Greg Capazorio to our Time for Truth program. And if you can put him up on the screen, please, and we will welcome him. There you go. And if we can turn that phone off, and then welcome Mr. Capazorio.
Hi, Ben. So nice to be here with you. So nice to be here with you. What a great introduction. Not of mine, but of yours, of seeing all the work you've done and the work you do. It's so impressive. And I'm very, very honored to be here with you. Very honored.
It's my pleasure to have you. It's amazing what you've done, and you're dealing in a sector that really is so important globally, because what are we all looking for? Safety, security. It would be nice to go to sleep without an alarm system and knowing that our police officers were safe, and that these men and women who have unfortunately gone into criminality get reformed. So I wanted to ask you, because you picked such a tough field, what inspired you to choose this career in criminal justice and prison reform?
Very interesting. In South Africa, when we ended the apartheid era, which was the psychiatric program called apartheid, when we finally got rid of that, the unfortunate result, or the product of that psychiatric apartheid, was a terrible crime rate that just skyrocketed. So South Africans, individually and as a group, were very traumatized by a lot of the criminality that was going on. And we became, within like 5 years, we were like the murder capital of the world. So as a South African citizen and an individual who loves his fellow man and he loves to see his country, because South Africa is a beautiful country. The people are incredible. They're just hardworking, decent, down to earth, honorable people, friendly people. And to see that constant, like you said just now, like that constant fear of having to have alarmed, your house alarmed, your car alarmed. So I was just looking for, I was hoping the government would have a solution, because they have so much money and they have so much resources, but they unfortunately didn't. So I found Criminon, and it made it my duty to give the government, the Department of Prisons, the programs that we could actually institute and work hand in hand with them to institute the program nationwide.
Well,
so there was a personal intention there, and also one for the greatest good for the country.
Absolutely. We just put the link up on the screen for the viewers watching today, so they can actually click on criminon.org. And engineer, if you pop that on for the viewers so they can see, there you go. You can click on that link. So, I was reading a little bit about this, and I definitely see South Africa, unfortunately, one of the top countries with crime in the world, Venezuela, Mexico. And what I wanted to ask you, what are the problems that we're facing globally with this prison structure and the way it's functioning? Is it working? Is it failing? Is it partially working?
It's not working, Ben and Dr. Fielko, and mostly because of this. The justice systems planet-wide, instead of focusing on rehabilitation, they're focusing on penalties and punishment. And you and I know that when you just have punitive measures, they don't work. There's no incentive. And what it creates is that you create an unnecessary enemy of the individual that you're punishing all the time. And it was interesting, my experience of meeting the men and women in prison, working with them, getting them through these courses to restore their self-respect and have them rehabilitate, from working with them and seeing that they actually do want to change. They just don't have effective tools. And to then, it was interesting, then having the government see the change in these individuals and seeing the methods that we were using, which is education-based, rehabilitation programs, and just getting in, because with Criminon, we get the individual to do the work. It's not theory. There's not just like, okay, I learned this, or I showed up for class, so I'm going to get a certificate. No, what my integrity is, and what the integrity of the founder of the program is, of the materials is you have to know it and then apply it, because that's where you're going to get the results. And the miracles that I experienced, that I saw personally, that I've worked with guys, and I've worked with men in many different countries around the world, but it's been the same incredible result, this restoration of dignity, of self-pride, of respect. And when a man or woman restores their self-pride, it is like this titanium, unbreakable pride that they now have in themselves that they will not allow themselves to go back. So I gave you a long-winded answer. The answer is we need to move 180 degrees away from punishment to rehabilitation. And here's one thing that I do understand as well. I do understand that individuals, public, have a little bit of a like, no, but I want them to pay for what they did to my daughter, or what they did to my son, or what they did to my wife, or what they did to me. I understand that. Believe me, I understand that. But it hasn't changed anything. It never moved. It never changed the penal system. So the honest to goodness way is rehabilitation. And you only rehabilitate those which are the majority who want to rehabilitate. The rest, just let them stay in prison. Let them stay there, serve their time, get their dues. But the ones, and I found this, there was the majority of men and women, when I approached them and when I would, give them the benefits of our courses and our programs and actually give them a future that they could contribute to. It's interesting. Their contribution is vital. If you just hand it to them, then there's no participation. So my experience and I've been working in this field since 1995, has always been educate and get them to do it.
Makes total sense to me. I had a criminal reformed in my office about a month ago, and when he came in as a new patient, I spoke to him, and I got a feeling about things that were bothering him, and I asked him if he had problems with study when he was a young guy, and he goes, absolutely, and he was amazed. He goes, how did you know? He goes, I felt bad about that. I really felt uncomfortable that I didn't feel that I could learn properly. He's a big guy, very big guy, and very mellow though. And, I told him a little bit about this program that you're talking about, and he was very excited about it because he said, I wish I had that then, but, now I can learn how to study, and there's things I want to understand, and, it makes sense what you're saying about their self-worth, their pride, amazing. There's another point I want to emphasize that you mentioned, because sometimes we take losses in the world thinking that we're going to do 100%. But, you made a point that I have even found, even with treating patients, is that it's never going to be 100%. There's some people, unfortunately, we want to help them, but they don't want help. And, maybe they are, like it says, the bad egg or the person who's causing these problems. That's what I was going to ask you also, since in the work that you're dealing with, do you find that these criminals sometimes have been the effect of others who, even though they don't end up in prison, actually cause them to go the wrong way?
Absolutely. Almost one for one. Because one of the courses that Criminon delivers is how to identify antisocial characteristics, and we give them the data on the characteristics of an antisocial and the characteristics of a social personality, right? And then in that education, they get to see who the individuals are and have been that have affected them. Now, I maintain, and I always will do, that an individual is responsible for their own condition, right? But I do understand that under certain pressures and under certain very intense, say very harsh conditions and very threatening environments, that a person can go and become the effect of a suppressive personality, of an antisocial. And almost one for one, the guys that are in prison have antisocial personalities around them. I'll give you a classic example. One of the youngsters, because we also work with juvenile prisons, one of the youngsters that did the Criminon program, he gave us this incredible success story because he never had the fortitude before to stand up to his gang members that he had now extricated himself from, right? And he said he was on the phone. He had just graduated the first course. He was feeling fantastic, had started helping his girlfriend again with the kids, because it's interesting, you have young men and they've started becoming gang members at a young age, and they have girlfriends and they have kids. You know, at the age of 16, they've got one or two or three kids. But when they get to prison, it's kind of like they're done with them because their sentence is so long. But with our program being one that helps this individual restore all their areas of life, right? And he said, he's telling us, he's like, here I am on the phone telling my friend about the success and the wins I have, and and I'm going to be coming out of prison in a few months' time, and he's telling me that he's organizing jobs, for him to do that are going to involve drugs and crime. And he said he's thinking to himself, yeah, he's speaking to his friend who is outside of prison, not in prison, and he's in prison, and he's like, bro, I'm talking to you, I'm in prison, you're not, and I'm coming out, and you're telling me you're going to get me to do the things that are going to get me back inside you. Not you, me, back inside you. So he says to me, Greg, I said to him, bro, I don't wish you any bad luck, but you and me, we're no longer friends. And just ended the relationship right then. Because he spotted that individual wanted him to continue to be a criminal and for him to keep taking the rap. So that was a fantastic example of that we just discussed.
You know what? That's beautiful because,
Yep.
he can now see. And
Yes.
I know when I was a teenager myself, there's a lot of pressures. And as
Yeah.
a young man, you're supposed to be macho and you go out and do things with your friends. And I can see if you're not lucky, you go down the wrong path. So I wanted to ask you something. So what or how, you mentioned a little bit, so when you go into prisons with the Criminon program, is it basically like educational and involves
Yes.
some integrity counseling? Or tell us, the viewers, how it works.
Okay, good. So Criminon has 4 courses, right? The first one is called The Way to Happiness, and it's based on a common sense moral code of 21 precepts, right? That we then get the individual. So now it's very interesting that these precepts start off with the personal responsibility of the individual. So they'll read the chapter, they'll then answer the questions of the lessons, and then we get them to go and practice it. Ben, you see the changes in these individuals when they've got to go and do it. They can't just think positive thoughts. They've got to go and do it, So they do each lesson, and you see the progression. Like, I'll never forget one of the shot callers in a prison, right? His name was Ishmael. He ran the prison. If he said every inmate's got to jump to the left on Thursdays, they all jump to the left on Thursdays. They listened to him, right? And I'll never forget, he said to me, he was halfway through the first course, and he came up to me and he was pretty angry. He was like, Greg, this course is turning my brain inside out. And I was like, wow, that's it's a gnarly concept, right? You're like, oh, your brain is inside out. So, and I said to him, why? He said, because everything that I have based my life on, like I organize the drugs in the prison, I organize women in the prison. It was like, he was telling me things that I was like, what? How is this possible? But he was like, so he says, everything that I'm doing and believe in, your course is the opposite to that. I said, yeah, we're definitely the opposite to that. We don't believe in continuing criminality in a prison. It's supposed to be where you stop committing crimes. You start getting your life together, right? So he was like, I'm not sure I want to continue. So I just said to him, Ishmael, how much longer do you have in your sentence? And he's like, I still have 3 years. I'm like, good. Just finish this course. Just finish it. Get your own experience of this, and then you tell me what you want to do. Ben, this guy, oh my gosh. He finished the course. He turned that prison around. He got hundreds of those inmates onto the Criminon program, because he said to me, he even moved himself out of a privileged cell. He had a single cell to himself, and he moved himself into a cell with 30 other inmates. And I said to him, why did you do that? He said, Greg, I've got to get everybody onto the Criminon program. Now, this was a guy who used to continue living a life of crime in prison. Okay? So, but here's another thing, just in telling you the courses, right? So we get that they get to apply every precept. Then there's a section called the virtues, right? And these virtues are things like honesty, integrity, benevolence, friendliness, kindness. There's 20, over 20 of them, right? What we do with them on that section is we get them to take the precept, take the virtue, say like benevolence, right? And go and practice it the whole day in the prison. Go and be benevolent to your fellow inmates or the guards, whatever. And then once you've practiced that the whole day, write up what you did and submit it for a graduation, to grade that lesson. And you see remarkable change in these individuals, because they see that when they're applying what's, let's just cut back to a basic here, Ben. I firmly believe man is basically good. I firmly believe that. So when you focus on that, what Criminon does is we focus on what's good with the individual. Let's restore that. Let's get that goodness out of there, that toughness, that courage, that bravery, that honesty. Let's get that out of the individual. Because he's in prison. We know something's wrong. So we don't focus on what's wrong with him. We focus on what's right with him. And then you get premium A-grade blue diamond individuals. You get leaders of leaders coming out of those prisons because they have the integrity back, And you can look around worldwide in our current situation. You can see the lack of blue diamond leaders on this planet. Do you see? So that's what we're heading towards. You take these individuals and you focus on rehabilitation and you focus on what's good about them and pull that out of them. You will not pull it out of them. You get them to bring it out themselves, because I can't pull anything out of anybody. Get them to do it themselves. And Ben, we then have the foundation for leaders that can lead, or even if they don't want to lead, just lead a decent, happy, productive life.
Absolutely. It makes total sense because, once you have your pride and your self-respect, it's actually a joy. Sometimes we forget that those good feelings we have when we're around our friends, our spouse, our family, or the groups that we like to be with, those are tremendous gratification. And, it makes total sense to me what you're saying with Criminon, because basically, if I'm taking it home right, is now they get this back. They feel what they were missing. The anger gets melted away by the love. It says, Martin Luther King once said, you can't get hate to disappear. You have to enter love. You have to enter the light. And then the hate, the murder disappears. And so many have said that over the years. Makes total sense to me. What I was going to ask you is, what goals and dreams, because I know you probably have them, are ones that you've had and what you still have for this program in worldwide?
So, thank you. Great question. It's interesting. When I started on my post as president of Criminon International, I said to my team, I want us to work ourselves out of a job. I was like, I don't want to be a multi-trillion-dollar corporate, non-profit. I don't want us to have 20 zillion staff, because then that would mean we have failed. Because if you're reducing criminality and reducing crime and more peace, more safe neighborhoods, more personal trust amongst each other, you're not going to need a massive force or a massive organization to control criminality, because it won't be there. So for me, the goal that I have with Criminon is a world without crime, a world without criminality. It's like we want no crime so that people can. It's interesting. I noticed this in South Africa. Just want to elucidate this right. In South Africa, once we were operating in the prisons, prior to that, the government never used to release the national crime stats. You'd never see them. Okay, because they were too bad. Okay, so you never promote something that is terrible, right?
Right.
After 1.5 years of delivering Criminon, and we were only delivering in the prisons. I wasn't doing any preventative work. Only, rehabilitation once they're in the prison. But they started releasing the crime stats because they were going down. And this one government official says to me, he's a fantastic ally, and only because he saw the effectiveness of our work. He said to me, Greg, when we arrest an individual, crime doesn't stop. It just changes location. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, we arrest him in his neighborhood. Let's just say Brooklyn, okay? Or Compton or Hollywood or Beverly Hills or, even the posh neighborhood. We arrest him and we put him in prison. The crime changes location because it continues in the prison, which was a really big eye-opener for me in the beginning, was how much crime is committed in prison, okay? So he said to me, so I said to him, okay, I was trying to figure out what he was getting to. He said to me, the only thing that stops crime, and he looked at me and I was like, I'm waiting for him to give me some solution. And he pointed to me and said, is Criminon, your program. He said, because the individuals, they change and they stop committing criminal acts. That's why our prisons have started becoming places of peace. We used to have, in the maximum prisons, we'd have guards that were armed 24/7. After the Criminon program, a year and a half into us delivering there, no arms. The guards they stopped getting attacked by the gang members. It's a different scene when men have their integrity back, have their pride back.
Well, you know what? It's really, I think it's unbelievable, and it's wonderful because I know you've been doing it and it's been ongoing, tremendous successes. So we're at the end of the show, but I wanted to ask, because I'm sure from our viewers, there are people out there, and I have friends of mine with the NYPD, with different police forces and prison forces. If they were interested, would you be willing to make a tour through New York?
Absolutely.
Good. So, we'll have
Absolutely.
to see if we get you up here and implement some of this for the criminals in our area, and prison reform, make New York a safer area. I want to thank you for having come on the show. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of the show, but thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. What an honor. Thank you so much. I'm
It's
truly
a pleasure.
Honored. Thank you very much.
You know what? We're providing something that the world needs. I want to thank Criminon International and the people who donate for this program, and for people like you who get it out there. And for our viewers, let's take an example from Mr. Greg Capazorio. Let's get involved. Let's be nice to each other. Let's educate each other. Let's restore pride and respect and trust in each other. And if we can trust each other, we can get somewhere. So thank you for tuning in for this episode, and we will see you on our next Time for Truth show. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got. While the world takes you down, you just keep moving on. Let your feet